Be here all the time. Very excited, and thank you for the wonderful start that we had today. Coming from India, we're all acquainted with cottage meetings every time. And whenever we have a cottage meeting, it's always regularly so powerful that we always have a fellowship meal. And every time I come to Leoma, there's a fellowship meal. Every time. And maybe we call the preachers who preach for potlucks in India as potluck preachers. And maybe, there's some connection. I don't know. Maybe because of Brother Chandrapal's work or something. I feel the same. That I become Leoma's potluck preacher, So I'm really thankful to be here. And to be associated with Leoma. Thank you for the opportunity that has been given. And tonight I wanted to talk a few things about crisis. It could be so funny when we take crisis to a different attitude. I'm reminded of this funny story that happened. A plane was traveling with 3 passengers, a Nobel Prize winner, an old preacher, and a Boy Scout. All of a sudden, the pilot had burst out of the doors, yelling, "The 2 engines have failed," and said, "There are only 3 parachutes. I got the one, and there are 2 remaining." And he jumps out of the plane with the parachute. The Nobel Prize winner yells, saying, "I just received the Nobel Prize and I have to do a lot more work to the world." And he says that, and he grabs the other parachute and jumps down the door. The old preacher turned to the boy. He said, "Oh son, I've lived a pretty good life. I've been saved, and now you are a very young man, and you have a lot of life to live. So I'm sure I'll go to heaven if I die, so you take the other parachute and jump." The boy said, "You don't worry. The world's smartest man who claims to have the Nobel Prize just jumped out with my backpack." So crisis is a situation when we look into it that we are so much, sometimes horrified about crisis. In our Christian lives as well, we see crisis as that same situation sometimes. Tonight, I want us to take a little glance about the 3 crisis situations that we see in the Bible. The first one, I would like to talk about the disciples. If you take in context with Matthew 10, 2-4, this is where Jesus Christ is appointing the disciples. We see that the first one is Simon Peter, and the last one, Judas Iscariot. The first one and the last one. So what is especially striking about this is, they are really committed disciples. Looking at Matthew 16:16, here, Peter is answering Christ's question when he asks, "What do they think the Son of Man is? Who do they think the Son of Man is?" And when Jesus Christ asks this question to disciples, they say, few say they are your Baptist, Jonah the Baptist. Or some say you are Jeremiah. Some say you're Elijah. And so on. But Peter, with an astounding faith, is claiming that you are the Son of the living God. He is so faithful, and he is speaking these very words, answering Jesus Christ. So he had a very powerful faith. But looking at the next verses, we see that Judah is making an agreement to trade Jesus Christ for 33 pieces of silver. Also, we see that Peter's denial is foretold by Jesus Christ. And we also see that Jesus Christ is betrayed and then denied by Peter 3 times before the rooster crows. Here, this is a situation we're talking about, a crisis here. A situation that has arisen for them to take a stand for their faith. But here, Judas repents of it, but does not take a right stand. He goes back to the priest, chief priest. He gives back the 33 pieces of silver and says, I want Christ back. And they deny. He goes and hangs himself. The same way as Peter denied Christ, he repented of it, but preached the gospel all his life. He has taken a different stand for his faith. The following situation happens in the book of Daniel. We see 3 faithful men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These 3 men have been, they've been faithful. And then there comes a point where they have a crisis too. In this crisis, we see that a golden image is being erected. And then they were asked to bow when the music is played. When Nebuchadnezzar comes to know that these people have not bowed, he punishes them. He first gives them a second chance, saying, you either bow, no, I'll go to that furnace. They say, hey, we'll go to the furnace. Again, there's a crisis here, and they have taken their stand in the faith. They said, we'll go to the furnace. They put into the furnace. As the story goes on, they put into the furnace and then they come back alive. Again, a crisis which caused them to take a faithful action. Also, we see Daniel, Prophet Daniel, here had another crisis in his life. They said, do not pray, and then he prays 3 times a day. No petition to be made for 30 days. And then he prays, and then he's sent again to the lion's den. I want us to imagine in all this crisis, there's been a point where it's life or death. When Peter was denying Christ, it was a point where he would be stoned to death, because if he says he knows he worked with Christ, they're going to stone him. They're going to kill him with Christ too. Abednego, Meshach, and they 3, when the 3 people, Meshach, when they had to take a stand too, it was either life or death. The same case with Daniel. He's going to be sent to the lion's den. He comes out alive the next morning. Crisis in our life is one crucial thing. But here, when we look into it, we can see 3 main important things, the stages of crisis. In Christian life, we have crisis on a daily basis. You could categorize the crisis to overcome the crisis in these 3 stages. The first one is unbelief. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego would have thought, why us? What have we done? They would have asked God, what do you want from us more? Why are we facing this? Sometimes we ask that same question. Lord, what's going on? Why me? That's where we are, in that stage of unbelief. This is the stage where we need to say, God, you're in control. You're the one who could solve this problem. That which takes the next step, that testing the faith. This is where your faith is put to test. When you say to yourself, God, you're in control, and your faith is tested, that takes you to the third one, a deepened faith. In all this, we see one important thing is faith. When crisis occurs in life, we need to take that stand to overcome that in faith. When it's life or death, it might not be the literal death of a person, but it might be the spiritual death of a person if you don't take the right stand. In all of these situations, we see that people have taken a right stand, but I want you to all remember this. I want us to take this home truth that when Daniel had been sent to lion's den, he trusted God. He handed himself to God. He went into the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they trusted God. They gave themselves to God. We need to understand the same thing. Peter, he trusted God too. He repented and he preached crucified Christ all his life, being a faithful servant. Also Judas. Sometimes we become Judas, where we try to hang ourselves, kill our faith. But I want us to remember that we need to trust God at all times, having faith in God at all times of crisis. Daniel entered the lion's den. If you're here today, you have a crisis in life. Sometimes you're going through something and you need help. Your faith may be, taking you a good step, but sometimes it also destroys you with unbelief. If you're here and you need some help, if you're wanting to make a change, come as we stand and sing tonight.
There's